Hello again. My name's Gabe Zollner. I posted a video and I talked about what the Black Panthers want. They want reparation, and they want a number of states, 5 states to be specific, to be given to them. Now, one of the problems that I have, and I've made mention of this in countless videos, is so few have a clue. You want to listen to the definition of reparation. The making of amends for wrong by paying money or otherwise helping those who have been harmed or wronged. Now, how does that apply to the blacks? You've heard Obama say more than once that slavery was wrong. And he blames not the blacks, but he blames the whites. Why would someone want reparation for having been wronged? Well, because that's what they feel they deserve. The problem is, they're wrong. I'm going to attach an article, and I'm going to give you some of the highlights. Some of you might find this to be rather shocking. The first slave owner in the United States was black. And more history they don't want you to know. How many Americans know that the first slave owner in America was a black tobacco farmer? How many Americans are aware that thousands of free blacks in the South were themselves slave owners? Let me repeat that. How many Americans are aware that thousands of free blacks in the South were themselves slave owners? Answer: very few. Embedded in the minds of Americans is a grand distortion of black history. Our perception depends largely on activists in Hollywood and revisions in academia. Add those who parrot Hollywood and academia, and you have a broad swath of ignorance prevailing in America. Don't you think maybe Fox News wants to highlight this kind of information? Well, they should, shouldn't they? Especially with the climate in this country at the present time. Question: did you know the following about black history in America? Anthony Johnson came to the American colonies in August 1619 as an indentured servant. In 1623, Johnson had completed his indenture and was recognized as a free Negro. In 1651, he acquired 250 acres of land in Virginia, later adding another 250 acres, a sizable holding at the time. John Casor, a black indentured servant employed by Johnson, became America's first slave after legal dispute with Robert Parker. Parker was a white colonist who employed Casor while Casor was still indentured to Johnson. Johnson sued Parker in Northampton Court in 1654. The court upheld Johnson's right to hold Casor as a slave on March the 8th, 1655. So here you've got the courts mixing into it, and they're not being held accountable. They're the ones that set the stage for slavery. The court seriously considering and maturely weighing the premises, dofied that the said Mr. Robert Parker most unjustly keepeth the said Negro from Anthony Johnson, his master. Here's a court. It is therefore the judgment of the court and ordered that the said John Casor Negro forthwith return unto the service of the said Master Anthony Johnson, and that Mr. Robert Parker make payment of all charges in the suits. 5 years later, in 1670, the Colonial Assembly passed legislation permitting blacks and Indians the right to own slaves of their own race, but prohibiting them from owning white slaves. 5 black commonly owned black slaves in the antebellum South. There were thousands of black slave owners in the South. In 1830, there were 3,775 such shareholders in the South who owned 12,740 black slaves, with 80% of them located in Louisiana, South Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland. There were economic differences between free blacks of the Upper South and Deep South, with the later fewer in number, but wealthier and typically of mixed race. Who comes to mind that's of mixed race? Half of the black slave owners lived in cities rather than the countryside, with most in New Orleans and Charleston. You want to read more of this, but see, again, this comes back to what I've said. Unfortunately, so few have a clue. I've talked about Democrats. I've talked about the formation of the Ku Klux Klan by Democrats. I've talked about the Jim Crow laws by Democrats. I've talked about Democrats being against immigration. And here you've got a great number of African Americans that are Democrats. What they're doing is they're furthering the myth. They want reparation. They should get it from the blacks. They're the ones that are responsible, not the whites. This kind of information is sadly lacking in America. Fox News should be talking about this. Bill O'Reilly should be talking about this. ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, they should all be talking about this to diffuse the madness. It's not going to stop the killings, because the killings are mainly drug related. Nothing to do with any of this. But if you want to go after people that owe the blacks, they need to go after themselves. Read the article. Let me know what you think. You got a damn good idea as to what I think, don't you?